So now we are really getting into group research designs, the type of designs that will help us understand um, where we're putting participants, how they're getting there, where intervention goes, and how we're measuring, right? And so thinking through. So I think I would encourage a couple of things. Taking PowerPoint, this video, your textbook, and really kind of starting to make notes. I'm not going to cover everything in this video. That will start to get way too long, and I already make them longer than I want them to be. But just kind of, I'm going to highlight some things, but then just start to add to it with your own going through of these sections. They're really pretty succinct when we get into these pages around types of group research design, starting on 205. So that's one suggestion. Exhibit 7.2 is also helpful on page 206 to think through answering these questions and then what kind of design you might have. But let's just get into group research designs. They're used often for evaluating the efficacy of our interventions, right? We so often want to know why something happens. That curiosity, I wonder why this is. So why do youth in poverty often have poor educational outcomes, right? That might be a question that we have. And so then how do we design a study to potentially answer that? We want to understand relationships between variables, the relationship between socioeconomic status and health outcomes, right? And thinking through that. And often we want to know, we hope we can say something about cause and effect, those relationships. But again, there's a lot of confounding variables, even when we do this gold standard, this randomized treatment and control. We've got comparison groups, people randomly assigned. There's still always a lot of confounding variables, and the higher statistical methods and models can help us sort of understand their impact. We're gonna live in a little bit different zone and kind of in this beginning understanding of these concepts. So let's just look at this. We're back to our X's and O's and R's, right? So a classic, this pre-post random assignment control group. This is kind of this gold standard per se that I've been using. So we see here that we have random assignment to both of these, right? This is observation 1. Only one group gets this intervention, our experiment, the thing that we're saying is going to change. Observation 2, right? The outcomes, the data that we find in this second group. So through this, we're saying randomly we're assigning people. So if we've got a pot of all BSSW students in the program, and we randomly assign 20 to one group and 20 to other, at the end of the day, those should be representative of the whole population. And by chance, like if there's differences within the group, it's not significant enough or is still representative of that whole population that we can say the outcomes at observation 2 hold muster, because again, like if we just randomly choose, and we're going to get into random assignment and sampling in a couple of modules, 1 or 2 modules, but just kind of thinking through that. So here we're saying, gosh, if there's change here, especially in the direction that we're hoping for, or we think it might happen, our hypothesis, there's a good chance it's because of this to some degree, right? We have a post-test only control group with random assignment. For some reason, we weren't able to get observation 1, but we do have random assignment. So there is still some experimental point, this is still an experimental design. We're doing the intervention right away. We only have one observation point, but we're still hoping that we can still say something at the end of the day, because we're just, that random assignment just gives us a lot more space to say, well, there wasn't a reason somebody chose to be here or what brought them here, which we'll get into here in a second in quasi-experimental. But this would be sort of maybe not quite the gold standard that we were talking about up here, but a nice way to have an experimental design. So again, any ideas of what a true experiment might look like in the social sciences, trying to do this. So let's say I've got students that are interested in wellness, well-being, sign up. And let's say maybe I've even got 60 students, right? I'm going to randomly draw 20 students to take this elective that I have. Other 20 students are going to be put on a wait list. Like they're going to wait till the next semester, something like that, or however that works. We're going to do this pre-mindfulness scale. They're going to take the course or wait, right? So take the course, wait, and then we're going to compare the scores on this mass. And we're going to say, oh, wow, gosh, mindfulness scores really increase. Let's say that's the direction that happens and that we want. So I'm going to say, like, there's something about this course that's increasing students' mindfulness, right? So that would be one way to kind of think about this experimental. We've got this random, we've got pre-post, we've got this control group. So I could, right? I mean, at the end of the day, if I said, gosh, mindfulness scores, you might be like, okay, I might need to take that class. Like that seems like a thing to do. It is increasing these scores. So if you look at that exhibit 7.2, if there's more than one group or are there multiple observation points, we say yes, but there's no random assignment. That's when we get into quasi-experiment. And I would say that this is a big part of the research that we do when we can't have random assignment. We can't maybe withhold treatment to certain groups for certain reasons. Sometimes we can. Sometimes we can say, hey, you're going to go into the new thing and the rest of us are going to stay in the traditional methods. Like that can happen. That would be if we can randomly assign that and feel good about that ethically, and all of that, we could still do that. But often we're in this quasi lands, right? So we have this one group pre-post. I said that with, if I gave you all a pre-test at the beginning of the semester and a post test, and scores increase, knowledge increase, then I would say there's something about this class that does that, right? Not random, like less we can maybe say, but we can say that there's something happening there, right? Post only with comparison groups, so there's no random assignment, but again, we're doing similar things to that experimental design, just without that random assignment. Pre-post with comparison group is really quite strong, stronger, one of the stronger quasi-experimental designs. And then you can have a multi-group post-test. And so maybe, again, looking through, starting on 209, quasi-experimental group research designs, why maybe can't we have stronger claims with this? And so reading through those paragraphs as you kind of have this slide up in this mini lecture, and making notes around that. Why is it maybe less able to make those claims at the end? So kind of looking through that. So quasi really is when random assignment is not feasible, right? For some reason we can't do some sort of random assignment to something, then we're going to live in this quasi land and see if we can still make some claims about our independent variable. Again, another quasi-experiments, there's GP1 students. They have the interview assignment, if you remember way back in the day. And I have new technology that I want to test. I've got 2 sections of the course, right? Section 1 is going to do this YouTube link submission. That's the current method. Another section is going to use a Go React submission, which allows me to give more in-the-moment feedback. If you had a class with some of you use Go React, so you can kind of think this through, right? That's the new way. So pre-video grades, performance course, post-video grades, because I'm saying something about my timely feedback within the video, that there's something there that's going to help students get that feedback in a way that's going to help their post-video grades, right? So think through, you could map this out. What kind of quasi design would this be? I'll help you just so you can test your knowledge. Maybe you pause there for a second. So that'd be a pre-post with a comparison group, right? Pre-video, post-video, those are those observations. I don't have random assignment, but I do have this comparison group doing current method, right? That'd be another way to think about that. So random assignment, again, it's necessary for a true experiment. When there's an experimental group and a control group, right? The random assignment, again, is to ensure or to help with the fact that the two groups are equivalent in some way, because we're not choosing based on a demographic. People aren't opting in because there's a choice there. Who opts in, who doesn't, and what's the difference in those two groups? And maybe we can't say that that's not the reason for the change in the DV. So again, just kind of thinking through this. So we're saying that hopefully the change in the DV is because of the intervention, that IV. When we have comparison groups, whether that's through randomization or we have a comparison group and a quasi because we couldn't randomly assign, this comparison group is hopefully somewhat similar. Maybe, again, students, who knows why you choose a certain section? Is that the part that's impacting outcomes rather than the instructor, rather than the content? If you're an online only student and you're just choosing all online, is there something inherently there? We can do some analysis later on at the end to see how similar the two groups were, so we can make some claims at the end. But there might be something different about online only versus sort of mixed traditional students and how they engage with the again, different characteristics. So looking at that, how might the two classes be different if we again are thinking through this thing? But comparison groups do help us in certain ways. So that's kind of our group research designs, thinking through random assignment when we can't randomly assign. Again, how this helps us make larger claims at the end of the day or to say something about our intervention specifically.